Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I am here to take a look at the Oko Planeswalker deck for Magic the Gathering's Throne of Eldraine. According to the back, it says it's Oko the Trickster. Oko is a shape-shifting iconoclast, uncommonly clever even for a fairy who prefers trickery and manipulation to all-out battle. Deploy evasive creatures and augment them at crucial moments to build an unstoppable force. The contents include a deck box, 60-card deck, play tabletop or online, 2 15-card booster packs, a strategy insert, and 2 reference cards. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside. Here is our Oko the Trickster. It is a 6-mana planeswalker, and for +1 you can put 2 +1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature you control. For 0 until end of turn, Oko the Trickster becomes a copy of target creature you control, prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. And from -7 until the end of turn, each creature you control has base power and toughness 10 and gains trample. Here's the deck box. Some nice art of Oko. Inside we have our deck and our 2 booster packs, as well as a hey before you play. We have a little bit of information about Oko, some information on how to play the deck. It's very general and it doesn't actually have a deck tech which tells you what cards do what in the deck. And then a little bit of information about the mechanics that you'll find in the deck. On the back is a guide to what planeswalkers are and how to use them. It's a lot of rules and mechanics, so I'm glad that they provide this information right in the box without having to go to some website that you have to type in the whole URL to. Let's go ahead and check out the deck. Oko's Hospitality appears to be the rare that searches out Oko, and it makes it so that your creatures have a base power 3/3 until end of turn, and then you grab Oko, so it seems like an alright card. It replaces itself with Oko, and then having your creatures have 3/3 could make them able to get through for some damage, and it can be done as an instant, so you can do it to make your whole team big enough to block and trade profitably. Oko's Accomplices appears to be the common for the deck. They're just 2/3 flyer fairies. Bramblefort Fink appears to be the uncommon for this deck, and it ties in with Oko's Planeswalker. It's a 2/2 for 2, oof. And for 8, Bramblefort Fink has base power and toughness 10/10 until end of turn. You can only activate this ability if you control Oko. And you need a lot of ramp to get this going, so think of it as a 2/2 most of the time, with a little bit of upside if you're able to land your Oko. There's a token for your adventures. Then a little tip card with information on attacking, blocking, and what to do on your turn. These are okay to just keep right there. And here is the code for the deck. I'm showing it right here because I've already redeemed this and have been playing with it on Arena. But it's nice that the deck that you buy you can also play on Arena, so if you don't have anyone to play against in person, you can always play it online. Anyway, that's the deck. I'm going to go ahead and play it a bit, and I'll be right back to let you know what I think. This is a bit of a mixed bag here. There are some interesting themes here that are not entirely consistent or congruent, and so it makes the deck feel just a little bit uneven, but there are some interesting, powerful things that the deck can do as far as Planeswalker decks go. So let's talk about some of those themes. The first theme that is apparent, and is probably the most apparent theme of all of the cards here, is the non-human theme. And so the cards that care about non-humans include the rare Wildborn Preserver, which can get +1/+1 counters when you play non-human creatures. You just have to pay X mana to put that many counters on them. You also have the Mistford River Turtle, which lets you get through with non-human creatures when it attacks. The Keeper of Fable lets you draw cards when you deal damage with non-human creatures as well. And those 3 are pretty good payoffs for the deck. Almost every creature here is a non-human, although there are 3 Garenbrig Carvers, which I don't understand what they're doing here, aside from being a combat trick on top of a body, and that's the only reason I can see it being here, because there are 3 humans, and they actually have anti-synergy with the deck's themes. Aside from that, there are a few other themes here. There is the draw the second card theme, and so that comes into play with the Fairy Vandals, which gain +1/+1 counters when the second card each turn is drawn. And the second card can be drawn either by the Tome Raiders here, which draw a card when they enter the battlefield, or the Keeper of Fables, which lets you draw an additional card as well. Finally, there's also the Return of the Wild Speaker, the deck's second unique rare, and that lets you draw cards as well, or just pump your entire team. And this is a weird card to have in here because it cares about non-humans, so you're drawing cards equal to the greatest power of non-humans control, but you don't actually have a lot of high power non-humans here. You have the Keeper of Fables at 4, the Two Unveiled Treefolk at 6, and the Beanstalk Giant, which probably comes in around 5 to who knows how large. And maybe the Wildborn Preserver can get there too, but most of your cards are going to be in the 2 to 1 range, and so that part is not as good. The second part is good if you can get wide enough, and then you're going to hit with +3/+3, which is good. But it's such a situational card that it's not amazing in this deck, and so it makes me wish that there were better inclusions, just like I wish that the Garenbrig Carvers were better inclusions as well. The deck also includes 3 Bramblefort Finks, which are unique to this deck, and what they do is if you have the Oko the Trickster Planeswalker on your battlefield, then you can pay 8 to turn them into 10/10s. Now each one you have to pay 8, so you can only really turn one of them into a 10/10 at any given time. But a 10/10 is a significant body, it just doesn't have any kind of evasion to hit with, and so you're just lumbering in with a giant creature. That's something that you can do with the other theme of this deck, which is ramp. You have the Merrileaf Pixie allowing ramp, as well as the Beanstalk Giant, and so you can get a little bit more mana than average, but to be honest, aside from the Bramblefort Finks, there's not a lot of places to throw that extra mana. You have the True Unveiled Treefolk and the Beanstalk Giant at 6, as well as Oko, and that's about it. And so that is not that interesting either. There's also Oko's Hospitality, which is Oko's rare card that digs up Oko the Trickster out of your deck or graveyard. And I found that to be a bit of a weird card because what it does is it instantaneously turns all of your creatures into base 3/3s until end of turn, and while that can sneak out some good victories like when you're attacking, it's not that great because the rate that you're getting on a lot of your bodies, like the Oko's Accomplices, which you have 4 of, they're 2/3s, and so turning them into 3/3s doesn't really do very much. The cards that benefit most from it are the Fairy Vandals and the Wildborn Preservers if you can get some counters on them, or if you put counters on something with the Two Unveiled Treefolk, then it could get bigger, but a lot of times the body that you're creating isn't that interesting. And so sometimes in rare instances you may be able to get good alpha strike through that turns out to be more because of that, but because some of your creatures will actually shrink as a result of the effect of that spell, it's very unpredictable. And I think that that's the problem with this deck altogether. There is a lot of 3-ofs, and in one case there's a 4-of, and you know they have 6 pieces of removal here between the Frogifys and the Charmed Sleeps, but I think that the deck itself doesn't have a lot of consistency in what it's trying to do. If it were a little bit more in on the non-human plan, then I think it would be perhaps a better deck, but the payoffs again aren't that great. There's just the 2 Keeper of Fables at uncommon, and then you have single rares as payoffs between the Wildborn Preserver and the Return of the Wild Speaker. So even the non-human thing isn't selling that well, and the draw second card thing, the only payoff is the Fairy Vandal. I mean, drawing card is a payoff in itself, but the only payoff is the Fairy Vandal, and so it doesn't feel that strong either. And this hodgepodge comes together to not really give you anything that interesting. Oko himself isn't that interesting because yes, he can put +1/+1 counters on your creatures every turn, but the second ability isn't amazing because your creatures aren't amazing. And so really this deck doesn't feel even, it doesn't feel great, and when you play it against any proper standard deck, it's going to get trampled. Against other beginner level decks, the starter decks that you might get on Arena or the other Planeswalker deck type things, this does fare okay, and that's just because the deck has a lot of redundancy in the number of 3-ofs that the deck has. But aside from that, I think that Oko the Trickster is not going to be the most amazing Planeswalker deck that you've ever played. But if you like Oko and want to play one that's not entirely busted, there's your Oko the Trickster, and you might be able to adjust this deck in order to really push one of its themes a little bit more and trim other cards. Like I would trim the Garenbrig Carvers immediately for something that actually fits in with the deck's themes.
And that is my thoughts about the Oko the Trickster Planeswalker deck from Throne of Eldraine. If you've had a chance to play with this deck at all, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.